In Colorado Springs, Sundays are normally reserved for peace and quiet.
Many people may be off in the mountains doing their hiking or just at home relaxing and doing chores.
For small business owner Barry Upwater, his empty office is a welcome opportunity to catch up on paperwork.
He didn't think much of it because it was just boys. And he went about doing what he does. So imagine being in your business on a Sunday afternoon and this happens.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
The child is covered in what looks like soot, could be blood. His arms are out. What do you do?
Oh my God. Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you hurt?
My brother's in there.
This young man's older brother, he had been hit by the blast of the explosion.
Walk over the one.
Meanwhile, on the outskirts of town, Detective Joe Kenda is spending some quality time with his family.
Right here.
This is early in my career, 1977. I was a homicide detective. I was not a supervisor or a boss.
Here, let me show you. All right, when you hold it, try and put your fingers on the strings. Twist your wrist when you throw.
Okay, I got it, Dad. Let me try it again.
Just as Kenda's son makes his best throw yet,
All right, better.
his special moment is interrupted.
Hey, Joe.
What is it? We're playing.
Joe, it's the office.
Hello? Yes?
And his face drops. He's 7 years old, and he's looking at me like I'm a Nazi war criminal. And I know what he's thinking. It's because I'm leaving him in this front yard. It pains me.
The dispatcher fills Kenda in on the tragedy unfolding across town.
We get a 13-year-old kid killed in an explosion, and my eyes go to my own son, and I'm thinking, I don't even want to see this. Children hurt worse than anything else?
I'm sorry, buddy. Something bad's happened. I gotta go see if I can help. I'll make it up to you. I promise.
20 minutes later, Kenda arrives at what looks more like a war zone than a crime scene.
There's still smoke rising from the area of the dumpster. There are fire trucks there, an ambulance, medical people.
You have to check for any injuries, for civilians, clear the area out to make sure no one else gets hurt.
Hey, Joe.
Bill? So what's going on?
So this place is a waste management facility. The explosion went off by one of their dumpsters. Bomb techs are trying to figure out now what caused it.
We did have bomb squad members on scene. There were not that many explosions in Colorado Springs, so that was kind of an unusual call in that respect.
They said there was a child?
Yeah, a little boy. Got him covered up over there.
They've identified this child as Daniel Carson. He's 13 years old.
The victim is a 7th grader at Carmel Junior High School, where he excelled at both academics and sports.
When a child is a victim of a violent crime, they flash in front of you. It's like having a nightmare when you're awake.
But the size of the sheet covering young Daniel leaves Kenda puzzled.
Looks like the explosive went off in his hands.
Oh, God.
Well, his little brother was with him. His name's John. He was a little lucky kid. He only got some shrapnel.
Lucky and unlucky.
Children don't understand death. They don't think it's final. They are distraught, and you can't fix it.
Do you mind going down and talking to his mom? He's sitting down there in the fire truck. And I'll take care of this up here and talk to the bomb techs.
Sure, no problem.
Thank you.
Mrs. Carson?
Yes.
She is still in shock from it.
I want to be able to help you as much as I can. But is it okay if I speak with your son?
This young man lost his brother. And so we're expecting a lot from this little body and this little mind.
It's okay, Mom. Oh, we were just playing in the lot, and then we noticed the dumpsters.
Dude, so many cans in here. Going up.
He and his brother Daniel were collecting aluminum cans. They always did this to make a little extra money. They would sell them for their refuse value.
According to John, as he and Daniel sifted through the rubbish, something caught their attention.
We found 2 boxes, and they were each like this big.
So about a foot long?
Yeah, I think they were ammo boxes.
What are these?
They didn't know what they were,
Whoa, those look cool.
so they pulled them out from under the dumpster, he and his brother. They were identical.
Let's see what's inside.
So his brother Daniel said, I'm going to open this one. And John told him, maybe you shouldn't do that.
Don't be a wuss. I don't know how to get into it.
Daniel, put it down.
And that was that moment where everything changed for that family's life.
Daniel opens this ammo can.
Can you tell me what you remember?
I just remember getting up and running away.
Kenda is heartbroken by the story, but he must get as much information as possible from John Carson before the young man is transported to the hospital.
John, this is very important. You said there were 2 of those metal boxes?
Yeah, 2 of them.
And did the other one explode as well?
And that makes everyone stop and think. 1 box exploded. What will the second box do?
Hey! There's another one by the dumpster! The ammo box is the bomb!
Is it designed to detonate when police begin their investigation? Or, worse than that, is it now unstable because of the discharge of the other device?
Everybody clear out! Back up!
So you have this other complication of a second detonation that could kill somebody else. So we immediately move everybody back 100 yards. Then a bomb tech gets on a bomb suit. Will it save his life? Maybe. It's certainly better than nothing.
Okay, good deal. You know the procedure. Take it easy.
So they send a man in close to the area to survey. What he's looking for is detonation wires, trip wires, and so on.
So here we have police officers going in to personally see if that's a box that will explode when they touch it.
Open it and see what's inside.
It's a very tense time. You're half expecting to hear another explosion. We have two kids, 13, 11 years old, brothers that are looking for tin cans, and they find a bomb.
Daniel, put it down.
The survivor reports there could be a second box, indicating the presence of another device.
The CSPD bomb squad is charged with the nerve-wracking task of defusing the second bomb.
Looks like I have an ammo can with dynamite and a grenade fusing system inside. There's a string attached to the spoon release.
10-4. Take it easy, open it, and see what's inside.
Typical.
We use certain different types of devices, rendering it safe. The particular techniques that we use, I cannot discuss.
You don't know what's going to happen here, and it's very distressing.
After removing the device from the ammo can, the bomb tech carefully disassembles the spoon mechanism on the fusing system.
I got it. We'll give the all clear.
Roger, all clear. All clear! All clear!
So what do you think? It's a homemade bomb?
It's definitely homemade. Whoever made it's got access to military explosives, and they know how to work with them.
Based on my own experience, the worst kind of criminal is a bomber. He doesn't care who he kills.
They'd taken a hand grenade detonator and attached it to the end of that box, and then there was a pound and a half of military TNT in the box that had blasting caps attached to both and hooked to the fusing system.
In the bottom was melted wax and all sorts of metal parts to create shrapnel. So it propels these forward, resulting in the same effect as if you had a gigantic shotgun.
So it was someone in the military.
Who else would have access to a grenade and dynamite?
So the next question is obvious. Who is our bomber trying to kill? Obviously, it's not to kill two young boys who randomly showed up that morning to collect cans.
Kenda takes a look around, contemplating possible intended targets.
Could this be revenge? Somebody who's unhappy with Upwater Sanitation. Somebody who wants someone from that company to die.
To answer those questions, Kenda starts with the owner himself, Barry Upwater.
Mr. Upwater?
Yes, that's me.
He is very distressed about this entire event.
I'm Detective Kenda. Do you think of anyone that might want to harm you or your business?
Then he said, well, I did fire a guy named Frederick Boyles.
I felt bad about it. He was just making mistakes and not responding to our training. But I felt like we parted okay.
Kenda wonders if, after being let go at Upwater, Frederick Boyles decided to get even.
Sometimes people fester. Frederick Boyles certainly would have some motive to be vengeful.
Any idea where I can find this guy?
Yeah, I'm sure I've got his address on file in the office.
Everything begins with a first step, and Mr. Boyles is going to be our first step.
That evening, Kenda and one of his fellow detectives are knocking at 4645 Picturesque Drive.
Can I help you?
We're looking for a Frederick Boyles. We were wondering if he lived here by chance.
Who's asking?
Colorado Springs PD.
I don't know any Frederick Boyles.
She's absolutely lying, and there's no question in my mind she's lying.
This guy? Well, maybe you haven't heard of a Frederick Boyles. You have heard of obstruction of justice?
Yeah, I know this man. This is my husband, Rick Coons.
Excuse me? So now a red flag launches into the air. We have a man with more than one identity. What's that about?
Rick!
And here comes Rick Coons, a.k.a. Frederick Boyles. He looks rattled and embarrassed.
Do you guys want to come in? I can explain.
And what they soon learned is the difference in the two names was a matter of being able to rent a home.
The owner of this apartment complex disapproves of people that aren't married living together.
Well, we lied to him and told him that we were already married. My girl's last name is Coons, so I told him my name is Rick Coons.
He has an explanation, as bizarre as it may sound.
Kenda isn't concerned about Frederick Boyle's personal life. He wants to know if Frederick had the motive and the materials to build a pair of deadly bombs.
So, how long did you serve in the United States Army? And he says, well, I was never in the Army. Do you know anybody in the Army? No. No, I don't.
Did you hear what happened at Upwater Sanitation earlier today? The explosion was all over the news. I used to work there. What happened? Why don't you first explain to us why you were terminated from the company?
The ultimate mistake was he saw a transmission leak under this truck and decided to continue on his route. The transmission leak got worse and it seized the engine of the truck. And it cost the company a fortune to repair the vehicle.
Barry could have taken the money out of my check, but instead he just let me go. That was very generous of him. He's a good man. He even helped me find another job, one where I don't drive.
So there's nothing here that says he's our bomb maker. He's not in the military. He had no ill feelings toward Barry Upwater. His bizarre story about his identity is neither here nor there. You could be Captain America if you choose to be. It's a free country.
With this once promising lead now a dead end, Kenda and one of his fellow detectives return to the station to put their heads together. But as the detectives discuss their next move, a new lead presents itself.
10-4, be right there.
The guy has walked into the front lobby of the police station, whose name is Robert Husher. He's a former employee of Upwater Sanitation. He knows about those bombs, and he's a former military guy. Oh my. This is almost too good to be true. We're investigating at this point the murder of a 13-year-old child by an explosive device that's homemade. We have a person named Robert Husher, the former employee of Upwater Sanitation, walking into the police station saying he knows about this.
Robert Husher, correct?
Yes, that's me.
I hear you have some information about the bombing that happened earlier.
Yeah, I'm over at Upwater every week.
I thought you said you didn't work there anymore.
He would put his garbage in the dumpster in front of Upwater Sanitation routinely. So a few days before this explosion, he notices 2 military ammo cans under the dumpster. He thought they might make toolboxes. He looks at it and realizes the bottom has been cut out of it. And he just thought it wouldn't suit his purposes, and he left.
Robert Husher explains that when the deadly explosion at Upwater Sanitation became the talk of the town, he put 2 and 2 together.
I think that those boxes were used as the bombs. And I touched them.
Which means you're alive. Lucky for you. The kid who touched them wasn't so lucky.
Kenda wonders if Robert Husher, like former colleague Frederick Boyles, might have built the 2 bombs as payback for being fired from Upwater.
What if he's trying to explain the presence of his fingerprints on the device that didn't explode? And he is involved in this.
Well, I appreciate your willingness to come in. Would you also be willing to take a lie detector test as well?
A lie detector? A lie detector test?
He's now thinking, I could go to prison. He just began to unravel in nerves. And that's something that a lie detector test doesn't like.
Oh, you don't like a polygraph, Mr. Usher? How come? What are you not telling us?
Kenda is beginning to believe Robert Husher may be a viable suspect, but he also knows Mr. Husher isn't in the right frame of mind for taking a polygraph.
So we can't possibly test him in his emotional state.
Relax, Robert. Why don't you stay here with Detective Jackson? I'm gonna go make a couple phone calls.
We go back to Barry Upwater.
Mr. Upwater? This is Detective Kenda. Yes, I have a Robert Husher here down at the station. I understand he used to work for you?
Oh, yeah. A sterling employee. I really like that guy. I certainly understood his reason for leaving. I was just sorry to lose him.
Based on Kenda's conversation with Barry Upwater, it seems Robert Husher was telling the truth.
He came of his own volition. He answered the call to be a good citizen.
So, what's the story? Upwater says he's clean. A polygraph won't be necessary.
Looks like you're free to go.
Okay, thank you.
So nothing about Mr. Husher is any more than ultimately a dead end.
Detective Jackson. Yes, sir.
So we're sitting on our hands wondering what to do next when ATF calls a cleaning crew in a government-owned property in town, and they discovered a 1-pound block of TNT in the garage. Well, now, that could be significant.
20 minutes later, the detectives pull up to the site of the abandoned house.
How you doing? Did you find anything in the search?
Nope. In fact, this place doesn't look like it was used to manufacture bombs or anything else. Just a storage site. But we did find a lot of dynamite.
Army issue?
Yep.
Really?
Yes, sir.
Did you check the lot number?
When the manufacturer makes the explosives, they put a lot number so it can be traced back. And they can tell law enforcement when that batch was made, who it was sold to, and where it was shipped to.
There's just one problem with the TNT found at the crime scene.
There are no numbers. They've been removed by scratching them off with a blade. So there's no way to connect them.
Yeah, this guy certainly knows how to cover his tracks. Is there any test you can do?
I can send it to the chem lab for some work.
And even though the lot numbers don't match back to the Upwater explosion, ATF does recognize the numbers from another recent incident.
An ATF agent purchased a 1-pound block of TNT in an undercover sting operation from the same lot number, and they have a person under arrest.
Okay, so where's the rest of it?
Man, that's all the dynamite I got.
Well, where did you get these?
Some guy named Bob McWalters.
He says that Bob McWalters is in the United States Army, has access to untold amounts of explosives, and believes that Bob is an active black market in explosives and bomb making in Colorado Springs.
Shortly after sunrise the following morning, Colorado Springs PD and ATF converge on the mobile home where Robert McWalters lives.
It's a guy who deals in explosives and tripwires and grenade fuses. You use an extra amount of caution when you approach this place.
There's a car parked here. I think he's in there.
Well, hey guys, just hang tight back here for a few until we clear the area. When it's safe to come up, I'll let you know.
You never know if this is going to be life or death or a pleasant conversation. It's the nature of police work. You prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Bob, come out with your hands up now!
So at this moment, we have a group of officers and a group of ATF agents, and we are at the home of the reported TNT dealer, Bob McWalters, and we're about to make contact and find out what he's got to say for himself.
Police! Bob, come out with your hands up! Make this safer and easier for everyone! Police! Come out with your hands up, Bob! On your knees. Put your hands on your head. Covering.
We are treating him as a suspect because he's been reported to us as a dealer in illegal explosives.
We're here because we know about the dynamite.
Have you been stealing bomb materials from the Army and selling them to the public?
That's crazy. I've never done anything like that. I have some dynamite, but I didn't steal it, and I didn't sell it.
He says he finds a bucket near a creek bed. Whoa. That contains TNT and blasting caps. So get the bucket, get it right now. He crawls under his trailer and recovers this bucket. There are fuses in the bucket, which are explosive devices. There's no TNT. What happened to the TNT, Mr. McWalters?
I think we need to continue this conversation at our house, Bob. Let's take more.
He's not in the comfort of his own front yard. He's in an interrogation room in a police station. He's in a jam and he knows it.
So, Bob, that bucket you showed us had fuses in it.
He's committed a felony by producing this bucket.
I'm really sorry, guys. I've been lying to you.
So how about a little truth?
I did steal TNT from the Army. I did. But I didn't have any other choice.
He says he's a young enlisted guy. He's not making enough money. His wife wants to start a family. He has heard that people sell TNT on the street to buyers.
I was just trying to make some extra cash. It was dumb.
And what about the bomb that blew up the kid? It was on the news. Have you seen it? 13-year-old kid named Daniel Carson?
I don't know anything about that. Really, truly, I promise.
Has he committed a crime? Yes. Did he commit this crime? I'm not sure about that.
Stay right here.
It's not clear what motive Bob McWalters would have to actually plant the bombs outside Upwater Sanitation. So Kenda decides to do a background check.
Detective Kenda.
And that's when the investigation takes a nosedive.
So you know how we had the black market TNT we found chemically tested against your bomb?
Yes?
Well, the results from it are in.
And?
There is no match. They come from different lots and were probably stolen by different people.
That's surprising. I mean, how common is TNT in this town?
Apparently, more common than we thought.
All right, well, I appreciate the help. Thanks. Bye.
So our McWalters connection blows off into the wind. What he removed was not what was used to build these bombs. So we are back to the beginning. Who took it?
Though Bob McWalters is still on the hook for illegal possession of explosives, all Kenda knows is that the material used in the bombing at Upwater was Army issued. In a military town like Colorado Springs, that doesn't exactly narrow down the list of suspects.
Anyone that lives in the city limits and even beyond could be responsible for this. We have no idea. So what is the intention of these devices? Were they built for a purpose and then simply abandoned? Or are they some sort of prank that never got concluded? From our determination, Upwater Sanitation is not the intended victim of anything.
With no motive, no suspect, and a single lot of TNT as evidence, the case against the mysterious bomber loses momentum.
For the next few years, a lot of leads come in, but none of it turns out to be anything. This case goes cold. Cases can go cold, not because the perpetrator is a genius, because they're just lucky.
No one is more devastated by the case's lack of progress than the family of young Daniel Carson.
I can't imagine losing a child and being okay with not understanding why it happened or who did it. It wasn't one that I'm sure the homicide team forgot about.
A 13-year-old child. Very disturbing. But you do what you can do. You cannot do the impossible. You cannot create something from nothing.
Fast forward 17 years. Kenda, now a lieutenant, is in his command office when the phone rings.
Lieutenant Kenda.
Hi, this is Jeannie Smith.
At this point in time, I was the assistant district attorney, which was the number 2 person in the office.
How can I help you?
Yes, I'm calling about the Daniel Carson case.
Okay.
Because we didn't have current information about it. The first call would have been to the Colorado Springs Police Department, to the homicide unit, to Joe Kenda.
I believe you investigated that case back in 1977. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, I did.
She calls me, she said, "You're not going to believe this, but I just got a call from a defense attorney who says that she has a client who has been consumed by guilt. He wants to confess to the bombing death of Daniel Carson." I almost dropped the phone. So here we are. It is now 1994. 17 years after Daniel Carson finds this device. So this fellow, whose name is Stephen Cassidy, realizes that guilt is a terrible thing, and he decides he can no longer live with his. He comes forward and claims to be the person responsible.
Getting a call on a 17-year-old case is really rare. You know it's going to be a challenge to put it back together.
So you've got him at your office right there?
Yes, he's here.
Can you transfer him over to one of our interview rooms and I'll be right there?
Certainly, I'll do that.
Thank you. Bye.
Moments later, Kenda is staring across the table at 36-year-old Stephen Cassidy.
So, Mr. Cassidy, what can you tell me about the bombing at Upwater back in 1977?
He says that when he was 19 or 20, he was in the U.S. Army. He had an associate also in the Army named Robert Varner, and that he and Robert Varner engaged in minor robberies, thefts, and various things.
We were young and dumb. I mean, most of it was harmless until Charlie came along.
Who's Charlie?
Charlie Caracas, our superior. I guess we wanted to impress him.
He is a Vietnam veteran. Caracas has bragged to them about taking human lives, that he has no compassion about killing people.
You guys want to get involved in some real shit? None of that petty stuff you guys are used to?
Sure we do.
They want to impress him with their willingness to behave in the same way.
Yeah, so what's the plan? I got an idea to get some extra cash. I was thinking we could rob a disco, steal the customers' wallets.
This is the 70s. People had money. They didn't have plastic.
We're gonna do that with guns?
Of course. But we're gonna need a distraction, just in case the cops show up before we get out of there.
So Caracas says, "I will build a couple of bombs based on my experience and training, and we will use these bombs to cover our escape after the robbery.
And what's all this have to do with the sanitation company?
The disco that we were going to rob was right down the street. We figured if the cops came, we'd detonate the bombs for diversion.
This crazy plan appeals to these two kids because it contains machismo elements. We're going to build bombs. We're going to get thousands of dollars. We're going to blow people up if we have to. They go over there.
You guys keep your eyes peeled.
Caracas takes the bombs and he puts them under a dumpster in front of the garbage company.
They planned the robbery and did dry runs to see how the timing would work and whether or not there was going to be any impediment to carrying out their plan.
But according to Stephen Cassidy, the robbery never made it past this initial planning phase.
Caracas bailed. He just didn't want to do it anymore. I think he realized that the security was much higher than we thought it was going to be.
They assume Caracas returned and recovered the devices from the dumpster.
A month later, Stephen discovered what actually happened to the two bombs they made.
He hears the bombing and where it is. And he just knows that Caracas never went back and recovered them, as some little kid blew himself up with it.
It was horrible. We all knew, but no one said anything about it.
Kenda listens carefully as 17 years of guilt pour out. But the investigation isn't over yet.
So now the next step is find the two accomplices to see if they can corroborate this story. We discover Robert Varner living in a town in Georgia. He is married. He has a daughter who is also, interestingly enough, 13 years of age.
So you gonna tell me what I'm doing here?
Yes. We brought you in here to discuss the bombing incident that happened here back in 1977.
And he says, I want a lawyer. Okay, you can have a lawyer. But would like to show you something while you're considering what attorney you'd like to call. Here's a picture of 13-year-old Daniel Carson after the bomb that you and Cassidy and Caracas created. And then he really breaks down. He confirms to a T what Mr. Cassidy told us, detail by detail. And Caracas is the mastermind. He is responsible for the plan.
Stephen Cassidy and Robert Varner plead guilty to first-degree murder. Due to their cooperation, Varner is sentenced to 3 years in prison and Cassidy receives 2 years of probation. But bringing the crime's ringleader, Sergeant Charles Caracas, to justice proves a more difficult task.
There was very little physical evidence that could tie Charles to the crime scene itself.
Cold cases are extremely difficult to prosecute in a courtroom. You better have a dead-bang case, or a jury is going to raise their eyebrow.
Sergeant Charles Caracas was charged, but he wasn't convicted.
It's a horrible ending, but at least it's an ending.
The answers aren't always easy. The answers aren't always comforting, but they're answers. And now that they have what happened and why and who was involved, it gives them a piece of a closure.
Daniel Carson lost his life at age 13, and nobody's ever going to pay the price for that. And it pains me, and their family continues to suffer. You will never get over the loss of a child. It's not the way of things. Your children are supposed to bury you, not the other way around.
Night falls over the flatlands of central Texas, and the highway breathes heat like an open furnace. A single set of headlights cuts through the dust, vanishes, and never returns. That's how the story begins, a drive home that never reached the driveway, a name whispered on the police radio at 2:47 a.m., a silence that would outlast 2 decades. Her name was Claire Donovan, 27 years old, a nurse finishing a late shift at St. Mary's Medical in Barton County. She called her fiancé at 11:16 p.m., said she was picking up a soda for the ride. The call ended with laughter, static, and then, nothing. When troopers found her car the next morning, it was angled off Highway 147 like it had drifted in sleep. The driver's door stood open, keys still in the ignition, purse on the passenger seat. The engine cold. Inside the cup holder, the half-empty can of Dr. Pepper. No struggle. No blood. Only the impression of hands that had once gripped the steering wheel, then vanished into the fields. The town woke to sirens and speculation. Reporters arrived before dawn, cameras fogged by humidity, calling it a disappearance, not yet a crime. Locals gathered behind the tape, whispering about coyotes, truckers, ghosts of the interstate. Claire's mother sat on the porch holding her daughter's photo, smiling in her nurse uniform, while deputies swept the ditches for clues that weren't there. The sheriff at the time, Ray Mendez, stood before the microphones and promised answers. He spoke with the kind of confidence only small-town officers carry, the belief that every mystery can be solved by sunset if you just keep the coffee hot and the questions sharp. But days turned to weeks. The fields yielded nothing. Dogs lost the scent. The press moved on. And the town began to forget, or pretend to. Then came the letters. Handwritten envelopes, postmarked from neighboring counties, arriving without return address. Each containing a single sentence typed on an old machine, she was not alone. The first was dismissed as a cruel joke. The second made the front page of the Barton Gazette. By the third, the FBI stepped in. Agents traced the paper stock, the ink composition, the typewriter model, a 1960s Smith Corona Silent Super, manufactured in New York, sold to a school district in Austin. Hundreds had been auctioned off in the 80s. A dead end that felt almost designed. Rumors grew like weeds. Truck stop waitresses swore they'd seen a woman matching Claire's description heading north on foot. A rancher claimed his dogs howled each year on the anniversary. Teenagers dared each other to drive past mile marker 41 after midnight, where the air seemed to hum, and headlights sometimes flickered for no reason at all. Detectives dug into Claire's life. Nothing fit the pattern of a runaway, no debt, no secret affair, no mental breakdown. Her friends said she was steady as clockwork. Her patients adored her. The only odd detail was a recent call she'd made to a local garage, inquiring about new tires, though hers were barely 6 months old. By autumn, the case went cold. The file grew dust like a second skin. Detective notes faded in blue ink until they read like ghost stories: no movement, family in mourning, community uneasy. The sheriff retired in 2005, still haunted by a single sentence: she was not alone. But files don't forget. They wait. In the summer of 2019, a new generation of investigators reopened the box, literally. The evidence was transferred to Austin for digitization. Among the old photographs and soil samples, a forgotten plastic bag surfaced, inside it, a cigarette butt collected from the driver's side window ledge. Unsmoked. Crushed by pressure, not fire. Back in 2003 it had been too degraded for testing. Now, forensic science had caught up. The lab extracted a partial DNA profile, entered it into CODIS, and waited. Weeks later, ping. Not a direct match, a familial hit from a minor theft case in Oklahoma. A surname, Keller. A bloodline that led back to a man once questioned and cleared in 2003, Evan Keller, truck mechanic, then 34, living 10 miles from the disappearance site. Investigators dug through archives. Keller had moved shortly after the incident, married, started an auto repair business. No criminal record beyond traffic tickets. Neighbors described him as quiet, helpful, ordinary. But in cold cases, ordinary is never harmless. A search warrant was quietly issued. Officers dug through the shop's storage room and found a dust-covered tool chest with a broken lock. Inside, wrapped in plastic and tape, a faded nurse's ID card bearing the name Claire Donovan. The sheriff's office froze. Evidence that had slept for 16 years now sat under fluorescent light. Keller was brought in for questioning. He sat calm, hands folded, eyes steady. Said he found the ID years ago in a ditch, kept it, out of curiosity. Denied ever meeting Claire. When shown the letters, he smirked, said he preferred email. But forensic analysis found trace fibers on the plastic matching his garage's insulation material. Enough for probable cause, not enough for conviction. The county erupted. Old wounds ripped open in the papers, radio call-ins, church bulletins. Was the killer one of them all along? Why had the system missed it? And most of all, if Claire was dead, where was she? Cadaver dogs were deployed across hundreds of acres. Drones scanned fields that had since become subdivisions. A local well was drained. Nothing. The land refused to speak. Then, one night in October, a storm tore through Barton County. Lightning split a tree near an abandoned farm close to mile marker 41. The next morning, a farmer found exposed soil and a fragment of cloth caught on the roots. The forensic team arrived within hours. Under 6 feet of earth lay a partial skeleton, and a bracelet engraved with the letters CD. DNA confirmed the identity. 17 years after her disappearance, Claire Donovan was finally found. The town stood still. At the memorial service, the air was thick with questions and thinner with answers. The case was reclassified as homicide. But Keller, by then hospitalized with terminal cancer, maintained his innocence to the end. When he died, he left behind a storage locker in Dallas. Inside, investigators found newspaper clippings of the case, a map marked with red pins, and one final envelope addressed to the Barton County Sheriff's Office. Typed on a Smith Corona. It read, "Not me. Check the field." The field was searched again, nothing but bones already counted. But beneath that sentence lay a smudge of ink, half a fingerprint belonging to someone else entirely, a former deputy from 2003, now retired, now missing. And that's where the story fractures. Because a case cracked is not a case closed. The truth in Barton County still waits under layers of dust and fear, whispering through the mesquite when the wind gets cold. She was not alone. Maybe she never was. The fingerprint sat there like a quiet insult, half a swirl pressed into dried ink, a ghost trapped on paper, and when the lab lifted it with powder and patience the ridge detail bloomed under the light like a bruise surfacing days after the hit, enough points to say it wasn't Evan Keller, wasn't anyone in CODIS either, and that was the first time the room went cold because the case had just done what it always did in Barton County, it pulled the floor out from under everyone standing on it. The deputy's name was Wade Harlan, once uniformed, once trusted, the kind of man who used to wave at kids on bicycles and drink black coffee at the diner like it was communion, and now his pension checks were still being deposited into an account no one could find him to claim, his cell phone last pinging near a service road that hugged the river 15 miles outside town, and the sheriff's office was suddenly staring into the most dangerous possibility of all. The monster didn't come from the highway, it might have come from behind the badge. They drove out to the river in a convoy that didn't use sirens, because sirens announce fear and fear spreads faster than facts, and Barton County had already tasted enough panic to last a generation. The sun was low, the water thick and brown, the banks lined with reeds that hissed when the wind moved through them, and there, half buried in mud like a thing the earth was trying to swallow, was Harlan's truck. Doors locked. No keys. The inside smelled stale, like old sweat and gasoline. On the passenger seat, a folded map of the county, the same kind Keller had kept with red pins, except this one was marked with pencil circles around empty places, culverts, abandoned wells, a strip of scrubland behind a shuttered drive-in. Under the map, one item that made the evidence tech freeze with gloved fingers hovering in the air, not touching yet, not breathing, Claire Donovan's engagement ring, the diamond dulled by river grit but unmistakable, sitting in a small plastic bag the way you'd keep a trophy safe from the world. The current sheriff, Dana Klein, stared at it without blinking, as if the ring might vanish if she allowed her eyes to soften. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Every deputy watching understood what it meant. Wade Harlan had handled evidence in 2003. Wade Harlan had stood near the tape. Wade Harlan had patted Claire's mother's shoulder and said they were doing everything. And now Claire's ring had surfaced in his abandoned truck like an answer nobody wanted. The search of his house came next, the kind of search that feels like betrayal even when it's justified. His place sat on a quiet street with wind chimes on the porch and a perfectly trimmed yard, the aesthetic of a man who wanted the world to think he was careful, gentle, normal. Inside, it was spotless in a way that screamed control. No clutter. No photographs on the walls. The refrigerator held beer and condiments and nothing else. In the bedroom, the bed was made with military corners. Under the mattress, taped to the wooden frame, was a thin spiral notebook wrapped in plastic. The first page was dated July 2003, and the handwriting was neat, almost delicate, as if the writer took pride in clarity. It wasn't a confession. It was worse. It was a schedule. Names. Times. Places. Short phrases like a man documenting chores, night shift, gas station, roadside. And at the bottom of one page, circled twice, a sentence written with harder pressure that tore the paper fibers, "Not alone." The notebook didn't say Claire Donovan. It didn't need to. On August 12, 2003, her disappearance date, there was only one line, 147, cup holder, keys left. A procedure, not a memory. A method, not a mistake. Sheriff Klein ordered the room sealed. She called Austin. She called the bureau. She called a prosecutor who owed her favors. And then she did the one thing every lawman in a small county fears doing, because it detonates trust like dynamite. She called a press conference and used the word internal. She didn't name Harlan yet, but the town knew. They always know. Names travel in grocery aisles, in hair salons, in church parking lots. By nightfall, Harlan's face was on every screen in Barton County, and people who'd once shared barbecue with him were looking back through old memories the way you scan a dark room for movement. The next morning, a woman came forward. Marla Stokes, 48, a bartender at a place called The Lantern, the kind of bar that smells like fried food and regret. She sat across from detectives with her hands clenched around a styrofoam cup, knuckles white, and she said she'd kept quiet for 16 years because nobody likes being the woman who says the cop gave you a bad feeling, nobody wants to be laughed out of town, nobody wants retaliation when your kids still live down the road. But she remembered that night. She remembered Claire's missing poster on the door. She remembered Deputy Harlan walking in around midnight, uniform shirt open at the collar, sweat on his neck, eyes too bright. She remembered he ordered water, not whiskey, and watched the TV while the news ran a story about a nurse who'd vanished off Highway 147. She remembered he asked, casual as small talk, if the bartender ever drove that road alone at night. She remembered the way he smiled when she said she avoided it. Not a friendly smile. A private one. Marla's statement didn't place him at the abduction. It didn't put his hands on Claire. But it painted him in a light that made the notebook feel alive, like it had been waiting for someone to notice the pattern. They tracked his last confirmed sighting to a security camera at a pharmacy in Waco, 3 weeks before his truck was found. He wore a baseball cap pulled low, purchased cold medicine and disposable gloves, paid cash, left without looking up. In the parking lot, the camera caught him opening the trunk of a gray sedan, a different vehicle than his truck, then shutting it quickly as if he knew someone might be watching. The plate was obscured by sun glare. The sedan never appeared again. The case team grew, an organism feeding on old evidence. They reopened every box, every bag, every neglected scrap collected in 2003. They pulled Claire's car from impound and reprocessed it with technology that didn't exist when she vanished. Luminol. Advanced prints. Touch DNA from the seatbelt, the door frame, the steering wheel. And slowly, the car began to talk. Not loud. Not clear. But it spoke in fragments. A partial print on the inside of the driver's door matched Harlan. That by itself wasn't a smoking gun. He was a deputy. He could have touched it during the original search. But there was more. A fiber cord between the seat and the center console, dark green, synthetic, matched the carpet in Harlan's truck, the same truck found by the river. And under the passenger seat, wedged where no one had thought to look, a small plastic fragment like the corner of a cheap lighter. It bore a brand logo sold at only one chain of gas stations in the county, a chain whose cameras, back in 2003, had stored footage on tapes long since recorded over. Still, something didn't sit right. Because the letters, the typed ones, didn't feel like Wade Harlan. They felt theatrical. Like someone playing with the investigation, leaving breadcrumbs just to enjoy watching the dogs chase their tails. And Harlan's notebook was clinical, too controlled to waste time with taunts. The letters had been designed to hook. To scare. To keep the case alive just enough to hurt. That contradiction dug under Sheriff Klein's skin like a splinter. She stared at Keller's locker inventory again, the newspaper clippings, the map with red pins, the Smith Corona typewriter connection. Evan Keller had the obsession of a man who watched from the sidelines. Harlan had the logistics of a man who moved pieces. And now there was a third silhouette forming in the dark, someone with the appetite to write, to tease, to orchestrate panic. The prosecutor's office wanted an arrest. The public wanted a name they could spit. But Klein refused to slap handcuffs on a corpse and call it justice. Evan Keller was dead. Wade Harlan was missing. And Claire was buried in soil that had held her like a secret for 17 years. If this ended with empty paperwork, Barton County would rot from the inside out. Then the call came, not from a tip line, not from a witness, but from a hospital. A nurse in Dallas reported an older man admitted under a false name, confused, dehydrated, with infection in his lungs. He'd been found sleeping behind a warehouse, clutching a duffel bag, muttering about the field and the ring. When staff went through his belongings to identify him, they found a wallet with no ID, a burner phone with no contacts, and a small key labeled in black marker, Locker 19. And in the pocket of his jacket, a laminated badge, faded but legible, Barton County Sheriff's Office. The name, Wade Harlan. Sheriff Klein drove to Dallas herself, hands tight on the wheel, jaw locked so hard it ached, because she knew this was the moment that could break the case or break the town. In the hospital room, Harlan looked smaller than his photos. Gray stubble. Skin waxy. Eyes half-lidded like he was swimming in fever. He stared at her badge and gave a weak laugh that sounded like dry leaves scraping concrete. "You finally found me," he rasped, as if he'd been waiting, as if the chase had been part of his plan. Klein leaned in close, careful to keep her voice steady, because steadiness is power and fear is a gift you never hand a predator. She asked him where Claire was. He smiled. "Not kind. Not sorry. You dug her up," he whispered. "You wanted your bones." His eyes drifted toward the window like he was watching something outside only he could see. "But you don't want the story. The story is the thing that bites." She asked him about the ring. His gaze snapped back sharp, suddenly lucid, suddenly present. "That was insurance," he said. "That was leverage. You people understand objects. You don't understand people." He coughed, a wet sound that filled the room, and then he whispered a name so softly the recorder almost didn't catch it. Lyle. Klein's heart didn't speed up. It dropped. Because she knew exactly who Lyle was. Lyle Braddock. Former investigator. The lead detective on Claire's case in 2003. The man who signed off on evidence logs. The man who declared Keller not a suspect. The man who'd retired early in 2006 and moved out of state. The man who, according to the latest check, had returned to Texas last year and disappeared 6 months ago without a trace. Harlan's fingers twitched as if he wanted to grab the air. "He writes," Harlan murmured, voice cracking. "He likes paper. He likes watching you dance." His eyes rolled back for a second. Klein thought he was slipping away, dying mid-sentence, taking everything with him like a spiteful god. She grabbed his wrist, felt the pulse fluttering fast and shallow, and she said Lyle's full name out loud, loud enough to anchor him. Harlan smiled again. Cold case, he whispered, savoring the phrase like candy. You call it cold. But it was warm the whole time. His gaze sharpened on Klein's face. Ask him about the field. And then, before she could ask anything else, alarms shrieked. Monitors spiked. Nurses rushed in. Klein was pushed back into the hallway with the helplessness of a person watching a door close on the only witness who ever mattered. Through the glass, she saw them compress Harlan's chest, saw his mouth open in a silent scream, saw his eyes stare through the ceiling like he was already somewhere else. And in that final second, his lips formed one last word, either a name, or a joke, or a prayer, and then the line on the monitor flattened into a single unwavering tone that seemed to stretch forever. Klein stood in the corridor, the sound drilling into her skull, and she realized the case hadn't just refused to die. It had learned how to kill the people who knew it. The hospital tone stayed in Sheriff Klein's ears all the way back down I-35, a flat, relentless note that turned every passing mile marker into a metronome for panic, because a witness dying isn't just bad luck, it's a message, and messages in cases like this are never accidental. Dallas fell behind her like a bruise on the horizon, and by the time the county line sign appeared, Barton County, Pop 18,042, she could feel the town tightening around her again, the same invisible pressure that had crushed the truth for 22 years, the same polite smiles that were really locks on doors. She didn't go home. She went straight to evidence, straight to the one thing Wade Harlan had left behind that wasn't infected lungs and a dead pulse, that key in his pocket labeled Locker 19. The sheriff's office basement smelled like copier toner and old coffee, and the evidence room hum of fluorescent lights felt like a confession booth. A deputy slid a cardboard file across the desk, property intake from the Dallas hospital, chain of custody updated, signature boxes filled like prayer lines, and Klein held the key between her fingers, turning it, feeling how ordinary it was. A small metal thing, light as nothing, heavy as a grave. Locker 19 was in a public storage facility on the edge of a strip mall outside Temple, the kind of place where people hide furniture during divorces and secrets during investigations. Klein arrived with 2 state investigators and a court order that tasted like urgency. The manager met them with a smile too practiced, led them down a corridor lined with roll-up doors that rattled faintly, as if every unit held something trying to breathe. The air was stale and hot, and somewhere a radio played country music at low volume, cheerful enough to feel cruel. The key fit. The lock clicked. The door rolled up with a metallic scream that made everyone flinch. Inside was not furniture. Not boxes of clothes. Not a life in storage. It was an altar to the case, sterile, organized, deliberate. A folding table. A lamp. Stacks of manila folders arranged by year. A Smith Corona typewriter wrapped in a plastic bag, the exact model the FBI had chased in circles back in 2003. Beside it, a box of carbon paper, a pack of cheap cigarettes, and a small stack of envelopes already stamped, already addressed to the Barton County Sheriff's Office, as if someone had been preparing the next wave of fear like a gardener preparing seeds. Klein didn't touch anything until the techs photographed every angle. She watched gloved hands lift the typewriter, peel plastic back like skin, and she felt the room tilt when they found the ribbon, partly used, ink still rich. Not a museum relic. A working tool. In the far corner of the unit, under a tarp, sat a cooler. The kind you take fishing. The kind you take hunting. The lid was taped shut. Evidence techs exchanged looks, the silent question hanging, "Do you want to see this?" Klein nodded anyway. Tape peeled. Lid lifted. The smell hit like a fist, chemical, bitter, the kind of odor that shouldn't exist in air meant for living lungs. Inside were small jars, each sealed, each labeled in neat handwriting. Hair. Fabric. Metal fragments. One jar held something pale and curved that made the youngest tech swallow hard before he could speak, a human tooth. Not Claire's tooth. They didn't know whose. Yet. But it told them what kind of room this was. Not just a hiding place. A collection. The folders were worse. Not because they contained gore, but because they contained language, pages of typed notes, transcripts of police interviews, maps, sketches, margins filled with observations written like a man grading a test. Officer demeanor, nervous. Witness unreliable. Public narrative useful. And then, repeated over and over with different contexts, like a signature, keep them looking. Klein's eye snagged on a single sheet tucked into a folder marked 2003. It was a copy of the original evidence log, the one that listed Claire's purse, her keys, the cigarette butt, the hair strands from the headrest. At the bottom, in the remarks section, someone had typed a sentence in cold, perfect alignment, item 17 misplaced during transfer. Item 17 had been Claire's engagement ring. Klein stared at that line until the paper blurred. Not lost. Not overlooked. Misplaced. During transfer. A lie printed like a bureaucratic shrug, masking a theft that had become leverage, insurance, trophy, whatever word made it easier to swallow. She thought about Harlan's final words, "Lol, he writes he likes paper, he likes watching you dance," and she felt something in her chest tighten, not grief now, but anger sharp enough to cut. They ran the typewriter through forensic comparison. They rolled the ribbon forward, typed test lines, matched letter imperfections against the original 2003 torn letters. The result came back with a certainty that felt like a door slamming, the same machine. The same misaligned E. The same faint scar on the T. The same pressure pattern on the paper. The letters hadn't been a random tormentor. They'd been the same hand, same keys, same rhythm, sitting somewhere safe while the town tore itself apart. And there was more. In the envelope stack, one was already open, already written, as if the writer couldn't resist practicing the sting. Klein read it standing there in the storage unit, and the words crawled across her vision like insects. You found one field. You never found the other. No signature. No flourish. Just that, bold as a headline. Back at the office, the state investigators pulled every record tied to Lyle Braddock. His retirement papers. His travel history. Credit activity. Phone records. Old addresses. The man had been careful. Too careful for a cop who supposedly just wanted quiet after years of work. He'd sold his house in 2006, paid cash for a smaller place under a different LLC, bounced between states, left behind no social media, no visible friends, no trail, except for one thing, a recent toll tag ping from a bridge outside Waco, 6 months ago, the same time he'd disappeared. Disappeared. That word hung in the room like smoke. Because in Barton County, disappearances weren't random. They were choreography. Klein pulled the old case photos again, not the clean ones for reports, but the raw ones, the blurred flashlight shots, the grainy scene images that smelled of wet grass and panic. She stared at Claire's car angled off the highway, driver's door open like an invitation. She stared at the ditch line, the dark stretch of shoulder, the empty field beyond. And a detail that meant nothing in 2003 suddenly felt like a scream, a patrol unit in the background of one photo, parked farther down the road than it needed to be. A unit that belonged to Deputy Wade Harlan. Which meant he wasn't just responding. He was positioned. The team mapped the pencil circles from Harlan's truck map against the red pins from Keller's locker map, laid them like transparent sheets, and where the marks overlapped, the pattern formed a crude arrow pointing toward one location that hadn't been searched properly in years, the abandoned drive-in outside town, shut down in the late 90s, swallowed by vines and graffiti, a place teenagers went to drink and couples went to disappear for a few hours in the dark. The ground there was uneven, full of old foundations, drainage trenches, forgotten pits, places a body could hide and time could seal. Klein went at dusk. Not because dusk was dramatic, but because daylight made the land feel honest, and she had learned honesty was not guaranteed out here. 2 state troopers followed. AK-9 unit. A forensic van. The drive-in loomed ahead like a dead cathedral, the screen white and cracked, the lot littered with broken glass that glittered like teeth. The dogs caught scent near the concession building, pulling hard, nails scraping asphalt, their handlers cursing softly as leashes tightened. The smell there was rotten old popcorn grease and something else, something faintly metallic that made Klein's throat tighten. The dogs circled the same spot again and again near a rusted drainage grate half buried in weeds. One dog stopped and sat, ears forward, the signal they dreaded. They pried the grate up. Under it was a narrow access tunnel, black and wet, leading beneath the building. The air that rose out of it was cold despite the Texas heat, carrying the odor of stagnant water and decay. The troopers shone lights down. The beam caught concrete walls slick with moss. And farther in, something pale. Something rounded. They went in on their knees, crawling through mud that sucked at gloves and boots. The beam wobbled across graffiti, across broken bottles, across an old wallet swollen with water. Then the light hit the pale thing again, and this time it was unmistakable, bone. A femur. Not animal. Human. Klein backed out, stood in the weeds, stared at the concession stand as if it had suddenly grown eyes. The forensic team took over, careful, methodical, pulling soil and debris, bagging fragments with a kind of reverence that looked almost like fear. By the time they recovered enough to form a partial skeleton, the sun had slipped below the horizon and the drive-in lot had become a shadow world lit only by portable floodlights and the blinking red of camera recorders. The remains were old. Decades. Not Claire. Someone else. A second victim, or a third, or a fourth, hidden in the same county soil, forgotten by everyone except the person who put them there. In the mud beside the bones, the tech found a zip tie, brittle but intact. And near the skull, a small plastic chip like the corner of a lighter. Same gas station brand. Klein felt her stomach drop. Because now the case wasn't a single tragedy. It was a system. A ritual. A pattern that had been running under the town's skin like a parasite, feeding, growing, adapting. The news broke before she could stop it. It always did. A reporter got word of human remains, and the phrase spread across town like wildfire. By morning, the drive-in was surrounded by civilians standing at the tape, faces pale, whispering, filming on phones, hungry and terrified in equal measure. The county commissioners called an emergency meeting. The pastor of First Baptist led a prayer service that turned into a public reckoning. People demanded names. Demanded arrests. Demanded someone to blame that wouldn't look like their neighbor, their cousin, their old high school coach. Klein sat in her office with the blinds half closed, watching the chaos through slats like she was watching a storm through a cracked door. She listened to her phone ring until the voicemail light blinked like an accusation. When she finally answered, it wasn't a journalist. It wasn't a politician. It was a woman's voice, trembling, older, a voice that sounded like it had been carrying a secret in its mouth for years and had finally run out of room. "My name is Rhonda Braddock," the voice said. "I was married to Lyle. I found something. I think you need to come." Klein didn't ask questions. Questions waste time. She grabbed her jacket and drove. Rhonda lived in a small rental outside Waco, a place that smelled of dust and dish soap and loneliness. She opened the door just wide enough to let Klein see her face, eyes red, skin sallow, hands shaking. On the kitchen table was a showbox. Inside were photographs. Not family photos. Crime scene photos. Photos of women, bound, bruised, eyes open. Some alive in the moment of capture. Some not. Klein's vision tunneled. She forced herself to keep breathing. Rhonda swallowed hard. "He kept them in the attic," she whispered. "He said it was work. He said it was old cases. He said he had to remember." Klein asked where Lyle was. Rhonda's eyes darted toward the hallway like she expected him to step out smiling. "He called me 6 months ago," she said. "From a number I didn't recognize. He told me not to talk to anyone. He told me to burn the box. I couldn't. I couldn't do it. I waited. I thought maybe it would go away." Klein looked down at the photographs again, at the frozen fear in those faces, and she realized the worst part wasn't that the killer might have been a cop. The worst part was that the killer might have been the one writing the narrative the whole time, deciding which clues lived, which evidence vanished, which suspect got cleared, which family got hope, which town got terror, and which bodies were allowed to stay hidden so the story could continue. As she stood there, in Rhonda's cramped kitchen, her radio crackled. A deputy's voice, sharp and urgent. "Sheriff, we've got something on the typewriter ribbon. It's not just letters. There's an imprint, like it typed over another page. We can read it." Klein's throat went dry. "Read it," she said. The deputy hesitated, the kind of hesitation that means the words are too heavy to drop in casual air. Then he spoke, and each syllable felt like a nail being driven into wood. "Address," he said. "Coordinates. And a line that says, 'If you want him, come alone.'" The words hit the room like a gunshot. "If you want him, come alone," and Sheriff Dana Klein felt the air tighten around her ribs, because a sentence like that isn't a request, it's a leash, and the hand holding it is never gentle. She didn't look at Rhonda Braddock when she answered the radio, didn't let her eyes soften into sympathy, because softness turns into hesitation and hesitation gets people killed, so she kept her voice flat, professional, almost bored, and told the deputy to read the coordinates again, slower, while she memorized the numbers the way you memorize a face you might have to identify in a morgue. The deputy repeated them. Latitude. Longitude. A point out in scrubland west of the county line, beyond the last streetlights, where the land turns to nothing but mesquite and dead grass and forgotten dirt roads that don't show up on polite maps. Rhonda stood there with her hands clasped like prayer and guilt, eyes darting between Klein and the photos on the table as if the images might move. Klein slid the showbox lid on without looking, because looking too long makes it real in a way you can't unsee, and she was already carrying enough reality. "You did the right thing," she said, but the words felt thin. Rhonda's lips trembled. He's not dead," she whispered, and it wasn't hope, it was dread shaped like a question. Klein didn't answer. She didn't have one. Outside, the Texas evening had that orange bruised tone, the sun sinking low and angry, and the wind carried the smell of dry earth like an old warning. Klein walked to her vehicle, opened the driver's door, and sat without starting it, listening to the engine tick, listening to her own breathing, because this was the line every lawman hit sooner or later, the line between procedure and instinct, between doing it right and doing it now. The message said come alone. It didn't say what happens if she didn't. That's the trick. Threats don't need details. They thrive on imagination. She called her command staff. She didn't say where she was going. She didn't say trap, didn't say kidnap, didn't say ambush, because words are contagious and panic spreads. She said, I'm taking a drive. Stay sharp. Monitor the main channels. Keep eyes on Braddock's known associates. Nobody moves on my signal unless I give it. The silence on the other end was heavy, the kind of silence that means they understood exactly what she was doing and hated it. A lieutenant tried to protest. Klein cut him off. If you want him, she repeated, tasting the phrase like poison, you follow instructions until I tell you otherwise. Then she started the engine and drove into the open mouth of the county. The highway out toward the coordinates was long and empty, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through land that didn't care if you lived or died. Her headlights caught tumbleweeds and fence posts and the occasional reflective eyes of something watching from the brush. Every few miles, a truck roared past in the opposite lane, wind buffeting her cruiser like a shove, and she wondered how many times Claire Donovan had watched headlights like that, thinking she was safe because civilization was nearby, because traffic meant witnesses, because roads mean escape. Roads also mean opportunity. Roads mean victims who arrive prepackaged, alone, moving, predictable. She turned off onto a county road, then another, each smaller, each rougher, until pavement became gravel and gravel became dirt. The GPS signal flickered. The world narrowed to a cone of light and the sound of tires chewing dust. She passed a rusted sign half swallowed by weeds, private property, and kept going, because whoever wrote that message had already decided what rules mattered. The coordinates led to a low spot in the land where scrub trees gathered like a crowd. No buildings. No lights. Just darkness thick enough to taste. Klein killed her headlights 50 yards out and rolled forward slow, letting the car coast, letting the engine hum settle into silence. She stopped. The night swallowed her vehicle whole. She sat for a full minute, hands on the steering wheel, listening. Coyotes yipped somewhere far off. Insects buzzed in the grass. No human voices. No footsteps. The absence felt staged, like a theater before the curtain rises. Klein slid her hand to the holster, checked the radio volume low, then stepped out into air that was warm and tense. A flashlight beam would have been a beacon, so she moved without one, using starlight and muscle memory, boots crunching softly. The ground dipped. The trees thinned. And then she saw it, a single folding chair placed in the open like an invitation, facing a shallow ravine. On the chair sat a manila envelope, flat and pale against the dark. Klein stopped 10 feet away. She didn't approach fast. Fast is what people do when they are desperate. She was trained not to look desperate. "Braddock," she called, voice carrying into the scrub. "If you're here, show yourself." Silence answered. Not even wind. She took one step. Another. The envelope didn't move. It waited. When she reached the chair, she didn't pick it up immediately. She scanned the ground for fishing line, tripped wires, disturbed soil, anything that would turn curiosity into blood. Nothing obvious. She grabbed the envelope by one corner and lifted. A weight shifted in the ravine. A low click. Klein froze. The click was small. Mechanical. Too precise to be an animal. Her eyes flicked to the dirt near the chair leg and caught a thin cord running into the brush, nearly invisible. She had just triggered something, barely. She eased the envelope back down, slow as lowering a loaded gun. From the darkness beyond the ravine, a voice drifted out, amplified slightly, not shouted but carried with calm confidence, the voice of a man who didn't need to be loud because he believed he was in control. "Sheriff," it said, and the way he spoke the title made it sound like a joke. "Thank you for coming." Klein kept her hands visible. "Where is Lyle Braddock?" she demanded. A pause, like someone savoring the moment. "You still think you're hunting one man," the voice said. "That's the problem with badges. You love single targets. Easy headlines. Easy villains." Klein's pulse thudded against her throat. "Where is he?" A soft chuckle. "Right now?" "He's where you put old stories when you don't want to read them. He's filed away." Her grip tightened on the envelope corner. "You sent letters. You kept evidence. You're connected to Harlan. To Keller. To," she forced the words out clean. "To Claire Donovan." The night seemed to lean closer. The voice answered, almost pleased. "Ah. There she is. The saint of Highway 147. Klein's jaw clenched. "Say her name." "Claire Donovan," the voice said, and hearing it from that unseen mouth felt like sacrilege. So well loved. So well mourned. So useful. Klein took a step back from the chair, careful not to tug the cord again. "I'm not here to play games." "No," the voice said, smooth as oil. "You're here because you can't stand an open file. You're here because you want closure like a child wants a bedtime story. You want the monster to be dead or jailed so you can tell the town it's safe to sleep." Klein swallowed. "What do you want?" "A beat." "Then, I want you to understand something. This wasn't one crime. It was a system that worked because you believed in it." Klein's eyes darted over the scrub, searching for movement, for silhouette, for breath. "Show yourself," she repeated, but her voice had changed. It wasn't a command now. It was a demand from someone who knew the other side might not care. The voice sighed, disappointed. Still trying to see the face. Faces don't matter. Roles matter. Then a sound came from behind her, gravel shifting. Klein spun, weapon out in one fluid motion, but there was nothing, only her own cruiser in darkness and the line of dirt road like a scar. Her heart hammered. She didn't like her back exposed. She didn't like how the voice had drawn her attention away like a magician. "Envelope," the voice said. Open it. Klein glanced at the chair again. The envelope lay there, innocent. She could smell the trap on it. But she also knew traps work best when you refuse to move. She crouched, keeping her weight centered, and slid the envelope toward her with the toe of her boot, breaking the cord's angle. No click this time. She pinched the flap and tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed. Smith Corona. Perfect alignment. One sentence at the top, you have been watched since you took the badge. Under it, a photograph. Her throat went tight. It was a candid shot of her, 2 weeks ago, standing outside the sheriff's office with a coffee cup, laughing at something a deputy said. The image was sharp. Close. Taken from across the street through a window angle that meant the photographer knew where she would stand. A second photo slid out behind it, her house. Nighttime. Lights off. Her front porch in frame like a target. Then a third, her daughter's school pickup line. Klein felt cold spread through her chest, a slow poison. She kept her face still, because fear is what this kind of person eats, and she refused to feed him. Is this your leverage? She said loudly, as if the land itself needed to hear. You threaten my family? The voice didn't answer immediately. When it did, it sounded almost offended. Threaten? No. I'm showing you the truth. The truth is you live because I allow it. Klein's finger rested along the trigger guard, not on the trigger. She forced her breathing slower. You want me alone because you want me vulnerable. Correct, the voice said. And because you want to be a hero. You want to be the one who walked into the dark and came back with answers. Klein stared into the ravine. Where are you? A shift in tone. The voice went quieter, closer, like it had moved without sound. Look down. Her eyes dropped, just for a fraction, and she saw it near her boot, half buried in dirt, another lighter fragment, the same brand logo, its plastic edge broken like a tooth. And beside it, something else. A small metal badge backplate, the kind that clips a badge to a wallet. Stamped on it, faint but readable, Barton County, Investigations. Lyle Braddock's division. Klein's stomach tightened. She lifted the plate with 2 fingers, held it up. This is his. You're learning, the voice murmured. Klein's mind raced. If the voice could plant evidence here, it could plant anything. If it could photograph her daughter's school, it could do worse than photograph. She wanted to call for backup. She wanted to flood the field with lights and sirens and guns. But she also knew that if she broke the rules of the message, she might pay a price that wasn't hers alone. She forced her voice into steel. You said if I want him. I'm here. Tell me where. A rustle. Then, suddenly, a new sound, an electronic beep, like a recorder activating. The voice shifted, now coming not from a hidden throat but from a speaker placed somewhere nearer, looping, pre-recorded. The real speaker had moved. Or never been there at all. And in that second, something slammed into the back of Klein's head. The world flashed white. Her knees hit dirt. Her gun skittered away into the darkness. A hand yanked her arms behind her, fast, practiced, zip-tie biting into skin. She tried to twist, to kick, to scream, but a palm clamped over her mouth and the smell of latex and sweat filled her nose. Her eyes watered. She fought anyway, because fighting is what keeps you alive, even when the fight feels pointless. A voice, different now, close to her ear, low and intimate, whispered, "No radio. No hero." Klein's vision blurred. She saw boots. Dark pants. A sleeve that looked like a uniform jacket but without insignia. She tried to turn her head, but the grip tightened, hard, almost gentle in its certainty. "Sheriff," the whisper said, "you wanted the story." Then the grip loosened. A shove sent her face into dirt. The footsteps moved away. Fast. Silent. Klein lay there, cheek pressed to earth, tasting dust, hearing the recorder loop continue from somewhere in the scrub, You still think you're hunting one man, you still think you're hunting one man. She strained her bound hands, skin burning. She twisted, found the edge of a sharp rock, rubbed the zip tie against it with desperate friction until plastic began to fray. Her wrist screamed. She didn't stop. She didn't have the luxury. When the tie finally snapped, it felt like breaking out of a coffin. She crawled toward where her gun had slid, fingers clawing through grass, finding metal, gripping it like oxygen. She pushed herself up, swaying, head pounding, and scanned the darkness. No one. Only the chair, now empty. The envelope torn open like a wound. The ravine silent. Her radio crackled softly, still on. A deputy's voice, faint with distance. Sheriff? Sheriff, confirm status. Klein lifted the MIC with shaking fingers and forced words out through a mouth full of dust. I'm alive, she said. He was here. He's gone. A pause. Then the deputy, urgent now. We just got a call. Your house alarm went off 10 minutes ago. Klein's blood turned to ice. Because the message wasn't just a trap in the field. It was a move on the board. The house alarm went off 10 minutes ago, and in Sheriff Klein's mind 10 minutes wasn't time. It was a wound that kept widening the longer you looked at it, because 10 minutes is enough for a door to be kicked, enough for a child to be taken, enough for a life to be rewritten into a headline that starts with the words, local sheriff, and ends with the kind of sentence that never heals. Her cruiser roared back onto the dirt road, tires spitting gravel, headlights slashing through the scrub like knives, and every mile back toward town felt too long, every curve a delay she couldn't afford, her skull still ringing from the blow in the field, her wrists raw where the zip tie had bitten, the taste of dust still in her mouth like the land itself was trying to choke her quiet. On the radio, the dispatcher's voice tightened with each update, clipped and trembling beneath the professional tone, as if the room back at the office had suddenly filled with smoke. No answer at residence. Alarm company confirms forced entry signal. Units en route. Klein's hands clenched the wheel so hard her fingers went numb. Hold them back, she snapped. Do not go in. Do not touch anything. Perimeter only. Silence, then a wary, copy. She heard it in their pause, the disbelief, the fear, the unspoken thought that the sheriff had finally lost the luxury of calling shots from safety. She hit pavement, speed climbing past what the law allowed, and it was almost laughable, the sheriff, breaking her own rules, except laughter had no place here. Street lights appeared, then houses, then the familiar turns that should have felt like home but now felt like a route to an execution. Her porch light was off. Her front yard looked normal. Too normal. And normal, in this case, was camouflage. 2 patrol cars sat at the curb, lights dark, officers posted behind trees with hands on weapons, eyes wide, waiting for her like a verdict. Klein skidded to a stop and stepped out before the engine fully died, and the nearest deputy started to speak, but she cut through him with a stare that shut mouths. She walked straight up her driveway, not running, because running broadcasts panic, and she couldn't let the person watching have that. Not again. The front door was closed. No splintered frame. No obvious damage. But the alarm keypad inside the entryway blinked red through the side lights. Forced entry without visible force. That detail prickled her skin. Lockpick? Code? A key that shouldn't exist? She drew her weapon and moved to the side window, peering through the glass. The living room was dim, lit only by the faint glow of a hallway nightlight. The couch cushions were undisturbed. Family photos still on the mantel. Nothing overturned. No sign of a frantic search. It looked staged the way the car on Highway 147 had looked staged, quiet, clean, like violence had been edited out. Klein glanced back at the deputies. Perimeter, she said again, low. No one in. No one out. If you see movement, you call it. You don't chase it. They nodded, but she could see in their eyes the same question gnawing at her, what if they are already gone? She slid a key into the lock. It turned. Too easily. The alarm screamed louder as she pushed the door open, and for a split second she hesitated on the threshold because every instinct screamed trap, and then she stepped inside anyway because if her daughter was in here, traps didn't matter. "Jenna," she called, voice steady. "Jenna." No answer. Only the alarm wailing like a siren in a storm. She moved through the living room, sweeping corners, muzzle following her gaze. The air smelled faintly of citrus cleaner, as if someone had wiped surfaces down. That detail was wrong. Her house didn't smell like a motel. It smelled like real life, laundry detergent, coffee, sometimes burnt toast. Citrus meant someone had been careful. Citrus meant someone wanted to erase themselves. She reached the hallway and saw her daughter's bedroom door ajar. A sliver of darkness inside. Klein swallowed hard and pushed it open with her foot. The room was empty. Bed made. Stuffed animals lined up like witnesses. School backpack hanging on its hook. But the window was open, curtain shifting in the breeze, and on the floor beneath it sat a single object, a cheap plastic lighter, the same brand logo as the fragments, whole this time, placed dead center like a calling card. Klein felt her stomach drop and her blood surge hot in her ears. "No," she whispered, not to anyone in the room, but to the presence she could feel in the walls. She spun, moved down the hall toward her own bedroom, checking bathroom, closet, every shadow. Nothing. No intruder. No daughter. No husband, she didn't have one anymore. Just silence and that citrus smell and the sense of being watched from a distance so close it felt like breath on her neck. Then she heard it, a faint tapping sound. Not footsteps. Not dripping water. Tapping. Rhythmic. Like keys. She followed it to the kitchen. On the table sat a typewriter. Not the Smith Corona from the storage unit, that one was bagged and locked away. This was another, identical model, its metal body scuffed, its keys worn shiny, and it was still in motion. Not hands typing, no one was there, but the carriage was sliding, the keys pressing down by themselves with a mechanical click, as if powered by some hidden motor, some cheap trick designed to make the room feel haunted. Paper fed through the roller, and letters appeared, one by one, heavy black ink like bullet marks. Klein approached slowly, gun raised, eyes scanning under chairs, under counters, for wires, for movement. The keys continued to strike. The sentence formed with a pace that felt deliberate, like the writer wanted her to stand there and watch, wanted her to feel how little control she had. "You didn't listen." The carriage dinged. New line. "You broke the rule." New line. "Now you learn the cost." The tapping stopped. The room went still. The typewriter sat there like an animal that had finished eating. Klein's jaw clenched so hard her teeth ached. She stepped closer, grabbed the paper, and yanked it free. Under the page was a second sheet already half-typed, as if the machine had been waiting to deliver the next punch. "The other field is where you keep your heroes." Then, beneath it, numbers. Not coordinates this time. A date. The 8th of December 2003. And a time, 11:16 p.m. Claire's last call. Klein stared until the ink blurred. Her hands shook, not with fear now but with rage so clean it felt like clarity. She heard a soft sound behind her and spun, weapon up. Jenna stood in the doorway. Her daughter's eyes were wide, cheeks flushed, hair messy like she'd been running. She clutched her phone in one hand. Alive. Breathing. Klein's lungs unlocked in a rush so sharp it almost hurt. "Mom," Jenna whispered. I was at Lily's study group. I didn't hear my phone. I came back and saw the cars and," her voice broke. "What's happening?" Klein crossed the room in 2 steps and grabbed her, pulling her into a hard hug that was half comfort, half armor, her hand on the back of Jenna's head as if she could shield her from bullets with sheer will. Jenna stiffened, then melted into her, trembling. Klein forced herself to let go. "You stay with Deputy Harmon," she said, voice low and fast, her eyes scanning Jenna's face for signs she didn't want to see, bruises, confusion, that distant look of someone who's been threatened. Right now. You do exactly what he says. You don't go anywhere alone. Jenna's eyes flicked to the typewriter, to the paper in Klein's hand. Is someone in the house? No, Klein lied, because the truth was worse. The truth was someone had been in her house and left without being seen, and if she said that out loud, Jenna would never sleep again. Deputy Harmon appeared at the back door, tense, wide-eyed. Klein ushered Jenna past him and out onto the porch, watching until she was in the safety of a patrol car. Safety. The word felt thin. But it was something. Then Klein went back inside. She didn't touch the typewriter again. She photographed it, bagged the paper, called for forensic techs, all with a precision that felt like holding a shaking bridge together with her bare hands. She watched her deputies move around her house like strangers in a crime scene, gloved hands, careful steps, the obscene transformation of home into evidence. And as they worked, the first truly sick thought of the night dug its claws into her mind. The alarm had been a law. Not to take her daughter. To pull Klein back from the field. To interrupt whatever the killer had planned next. To make her choose family over pursuit. To test her. Because now, standing in her kitchen, she could feel the next move coming like thunder before rain. The message had planted a time, 11:16 p.m. A date that never stopped living inside this county. And that phrase, "the other field is where you keep your heroes," wasn't poetry. It was an accusation. Heroes. In Barton County, heroes were names on plaques. Retired lawmen. Medal ceremonies. A wall in the sheriff's office lobby with framed photos, good men, smiling faces, service years listed in neat brass. And on that wall, the biggest frame belonged to the man who had run Claire's investigation, Detective Lyle Braddock. Klein drove back to the office with the typewriter seized, Jenna safe under watch, her staff stretched thin and terrified. The lobby lights were on. The building felt like a bunker. She walked in and stopped in front of the hero wall, staring at the frames as if they might blink. Braddock's photo looked down at her with that practiced lawman smile, confident, untroubled, a man who knew how to look trustworthy in a camera lens. Klein looked at the plaque beneath it. Lyle Braddock. Investigations. 1991 to 2006. Service above self. She reached up, fingers sliding under the frame edge. It shouldn't have moved. It did. It lifted slightly, like it wasn't mounted right. Like it had been removed and replaced. Her heart thudded once, hard. She pulled the frame off the wall. Behind it, taped to the drywall, was an envelope. Plain. No stamp. No name. Just one word written in block letters, Sheriff. Klein opened it. Inside was a strip of photo booth pictures, 4 frames, grainy, black and white. In the first, a man's face close to the camera, eyes half-lidded, mouth swollen, hair gray. In the second, the same man with his eyes open wider, staring dead into the lens like he could see through it. In the third, a hand held up beside his face, fingers trembling, showing a wrist with a familiar watchband. In the fourth, the camera had been angled downward to show a concrete floor with a drain, a smear of something dark, and etched into the concrete with something sharp, one word scratched deep. Field. Klein's throat went dry. She flipped the strip over. On the back, typed text, crisp and cold. He's alive. For now. Bring the ring. 11:16. Bring the ring. The engagement ring that had been in Harlan's truck. The ring now locked in evidence. The ring that wasn't just jewelry, it was a symbol, the proof of control, the proof someone had held Claire's life in their hand like a coin. Klein stood there in the lobby, the hero wall behind her suddenly feeling like a gallery of masks, and she realized the killer wasn't running from the law. He was wearing it. He had been wearing it. Maybe he still was. A deputy approached, voice tight. Sheriff, we checked the building cameras. There's a gap. 3 minutes missing from the feed this afternoon. Someone looped it. Klein didn't blink. How? The deputy swallowed. They used admin access. Klein's jaw tightened. Admin access meant someone with keys not just to doors, but to systems. Someone who knew exactly where the blind spots were. Someone who didn't have to break in. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number. She stared at it for half a second, then answered, putting it on speaker so the room could hear, so she wouldn't be alone with the voice. Static. Then, that same calm tone, close, amused. "Sheriff," it said, like a headline spoken aloud. "Your home is lovely. Very clean. Citrus is a nice touch, don't you think?" Klein's hand clenched around the photo strip. "Where is my detective?" A soft laugh. "Your detective? Listen to you. You still claim people like equipment." His breathing. His thinking. His remembering. And he's very tired. Klein forced the words out steady. "If you touch my daughter." "I didn't," the voice cut in, almost offended again, as if harm was beneath him. "I only showed you that I could. That's what authority really is, Sheriff. Not what you do. What you can do." Klein's eyes locked on Braddock's smiling photo now resting on her desk, face down. "Why 1116? Silence for a beat. Then the voice softened, almost intimate, like a man sharing a secret in church. Because that was the moment she realized she wasn't going to make it home. Because that was the moment someone else took the wheel. Klein's pulse hammered. Who took the wheel? The voice didn't answer directly. It never did. "Bring the ring," it said again. "Come to the other field. Alone. Or your hero becomes another missing poster." Klein inhaled slowly, feeling the building around her, feeling every deputy listening, feeling the weight of every year this county had been lied to. "If I come," she said, "you let him go." A pause, then a sound like a smile through a phone line. "If you come," the voice said, "you finally get the story." The line went dead. Klein stood there, the photo strip trembling slightly in her grip, and outside the office the town slept under winter sky, unaware that its sheriff had just been drafted into an ultimatum written in black ink and old blood, a countdown tied to a time stamp from 2003, and somewhere out in the dark, somewhere between fields and roads and secrets, Lyle Braddock was still alive, for now, waiting for 1116 to arrive like a blade sliding out of its sheath. 1116 wasn't just a time stamped on a phone record anymore, it was a pressure point, a countdown welded to the county's spine, and Sheriff Dana Klein could feel it ticking under everything, the fluorescent buzz in the hallway, the quiet shuffling of deputies pretending not to stare, the way her own breath sounded too loud in her ears, because when someone hands you a deadline, they're not asking you to arrive, they're asking you to obey. She stood in the evidence room with the engagement ring sealed behind glass, the diamond catching the overhead light like a small, indifferent star, and for a moment she hated it, hated how a piece of jewelry had become a key, a threat, a leash, hated how it carried the weight of Claire Donovan's entire life in a circle of metal nobody should have been able to steal in the first place. The techs watched her with the stiff posture of people bracing for an order they didn't want to hear, and she could see them running the risk math in their eyes, sheriff going alone, unknown suspect with admin access, a missing detective possibly alive, time and place chosen by the enemy, every lesson in every academy class screaming don't do it. Klein didn't need the lecture. She'd grown up in this county, learned early that, don't do it, is something you say when you still believe rules protect you. Rules only protect you when the other side agrees to them. She signed the evidence release herself, chain of custody lines neat as gravestones, because if she broke protocol she wouldn't just lose a case, she'd lose her department. Even in the middle of a nightmare, procedure mattered, it was the only thing keeping the floor from dissolving completely. The ring went into a small sealed pouch, then into her pocket, close to her body like a secret. She could feel its shape through the fabric, cold, accusing. The deputies wanted to follow her anyway, wanted to drape her in backup and floodlights and rifles, wanted to turn the night into a show of force, and Klein let them talk until they ran out of words, then she cut through it with something quieter than a command. "If I go loud," she said, "he kills Braddock or he disappears forever. If I go wrong, he does it anyway." So you do what I tell you. You stay invisible. You stay ready. You don't make it about your fear. Nobody answered. That was agreement in uniform language. She moved Jenna first, without drama, without telling her why, because telling a teenager the truth is like handing them a live wire. She drove her daughter to Deputy Harmon's house outside town, a place with cameras and a dog that barked at shadows, and she kissed Jenna's forehead in the driveway with a tenderness that felt almost foreign. Jenna tried to argue, tried to push past the fear with anger the way teenagers do, but Klein cut it off with one sentence that carried the weight of every siren she'd ever heard. Tonight, you listen. Jenna's eyes were wet when Klein turned away, and Klein didn't let herself look back. By the time she returned to the office, the sky had darkened into that deep Texas black that makes the stars look sharp enough to cut. She locked her phone in a drawer, took a backup radio with a fresh battery, and set it to a channel no one used unless things had gone to hell. She didn't tell herself she'd be fine. She told herself she'd be careful. Fine is a lie people tell right before they become statistics. The other field. The phrase had sat in her mind like grit, scratching, refusing to settle. Barton County had fields everywhere, cotton fields, hay fields, football fields, little league diamonds, the high school stadium locals called sacred ground on Friday nights. Heroes. Where you keep your heroes. That narrowed it. Not farmland. Not random scrubland. A place where the county displayed its pride. There was only one site that fit too perfectly, Memorial Field, a small park just outside the courthouse, a rectangle of grass with flagpoles and a stone wall etched with names, built after a deputy was killed in the 80s. It was where they held ceremonies. Where they pinned medals. Where they took photos for the newspaper and told themselves that honoring the dead meant the living were safe. It was a field, but it was also a stage, and whoever was writing this story loved stages. Klein drove there without lights, parking 2 blocks away, walking the rest in the dark. The night air smelled like cut grass and distant exhaust. Memorial Field lay ahead under the pale glow of street lamps, the flags hanging limp, the stone wall a dark slab against the sky. No one should have been there at this hour. That was the point. The emptiness felt intentional, like the town had been ordered to look away. She stepped onto the grass and felt it give slightly under her boots, damp from evening irrigation. The stone wall loomed to her right, names carved in clean lines, deputies, firefighters, soldiers. Heroes. The county's curated grief. Her hand brushed her pocket and the ring shifted against her thigh. A noise came from the far end of the field, metal scraping, low and slow. Klein's fingers tightened around her flashlight, but she didn't turn it on. Light is information, and information is power, and she wasn't here to hand power away. Braddock, she called softly, because shouting would turn the place into a beacon. Lyle. If you can hear me, make a sound. Silence answered. Then, from somewhere near the memorial wall, a small electronic chirp, like a toy waking up. Klein turned and saw it, a little portable speaker sitting on the stone ledge, no bigger than her palm. The same kind you buy at a gas station for cheap. It wasn't there during daytime. She knew every inch of this field. Someone had placed it recently, brazenly. The speaker clicked, and the voice came out, calm and smooth, as if it had never left her ear since the field ambush, as if it lived in the county's air now. Right place, it said. Right time. Klein didn't look away from the shadows. Where is he? A faint chuckle, then a line delivered like a punch wrapped in velvet. You brought the ring? Klein's eyes narrowed. Show me Braddock. Always bargaining, the voice said, almost disappointed. You really do think you're holding any cards? A pause. Then, walk to the wall. Names. Touch them. Feel what it means to be remembered. Klein didn't move. You want the ring, you show me he's alive. The speaker hissed lightly with static, and for a moment the voice sounded closer, sharper. You saw the strip. His breathing. And his listening. Another beat, then softer again, coaxing. Walk to the wall, Sheriff. You'll like what you find. Klein forced herself forward, step by step, crossing the grass with the careful pace of someone approaching a sleeping animal. The memorial wall's stone surface was cool under her fingertips when she reached it, the carved names shallow grooves filled with darkness. She traced one absent-mindedly, service above self, then stopped because the phrase had become a joke. At the base of the wall, half hidden by a low planter, she saw a seam in the concrete. A rectangle that shouldn't have been there. A maintenance hatch. Her pulse thudded. She crouched, ran her fingers along the edge. It had been cut cleanly, not chipped by weather. Fresh work. Someone had turned her county's memorial into a hiding place. The speaker crackled again. Open it, the voice said, almost gentle. Heroes belong underground. That's the secret nobody says out loud. Klein's stomach tightened. She scanned the field, no movement, no figures, just lamplight and the faint shimmer of dew. Her mind screamed trap, but her hands moved anyway because if Braddock was under there, if he was real, she couldn't walk away. She hooked her fingers under the hatch lip and pulled. It lifted with a soft suction sound, as if it had been sealed to keep air in. Beneath was darkness and a drop of about 3 feet into a narrow concrete tunnel, the kind used for irrigation access. The smell that rose out of it was stale and damp, like a basement that hadn't been opened in years. Klein angled her flashlight down, keeping the beam tight, and the light slid along concrete walls slick with moisture. Then it caught something that made her breath snag, an older man's hand, pale, resting on the tunnel floor as if it had been placed there carefully. The fingers twitched once. Lyle, Klein whispered. A rasp came from deeper in the tunnel. A voice, weak, hoarse, barely human. Dana. The name hit her like a shove. He knew her. Of course he did. He'd been a legend when she was a rookie. The man whose photo hung on the wall. The man who'd taught half the department how to interrogate without raising his voice. The idea of him under the memorial, broken and breathing, felt like the county's soul had been stuffed into a drain. Klein lowered herself into the hatch, landing softly, knees bending to absorb the drop. The tunnel was narrow, forcing her shoulders in. She kept her gun up, flashlight in her offhand, moving toward the sound. Lyle, she said again, louder now. I'm here. Where are you hurt? The beam caught his face as she rounded a bend. Lyle Braddock lay against the wall, wrists bound with zip ties, mouth bruised, eyes sunken but open. His hair was grayer than in the hero photo, his cheeks hollow, the skin around his eyes paper-thin. But he was alive. Breathing. His gaze locked onto hers with something like relief, and something else, darker, harder to name. You shouldn't have come, he rasped. Klein crouched beside him, knife already out, blade sliding under the zip tie. Save your strength, she said. We're getting you out. Braddock's fingers suddenly clamped onto her sleeve with surprising force, his grip strong for a man who looked half dead. Listen to me, he hissed, voice trembling. It's not, he coughed, wet and painful. It's not one person. Klein froze. Who is it? His eyes flicked past her shoulder, toward the darkness behind her, and his mouth tightened as if he was biting back a truth. He's close, Braddock whispered. He swallowed hard. He likes the sound of you breathing when you realize. Klein's spine prickled. The tunnel suddenly felt too tight, too enclosed, too easy to turn into a coffin. She turned her head slightly, flashlight beam cutting back into the darkness she'd come from. Nothing. Then the speaker voice echoed faintly from above, filtered through concrete, a distant ghost. There you are, it said, pleased. Together. Sheriff and hero. The photo they never took. Klein's jaw clenched. She finished slicing the zip tie. Braddock's wrists fell free, raw and red. Can you stand? She asked. Braddock nodded, but when he tried to push up his arm trembled. Klein hooked her shoulder under his, bracing him, and for a second his weight pressed into her like history, like the past refusing to stay buried. They moved toward the hatch, slow, Klein's flashlight bouncing, the beam catching puddles and cracks and the occasional bit of trash swept in by water flow. Halfway back, Braddock stumbled, and Klein tightened her grip. "Keep going," she said. Braddock's breath hitched. "He'll let us," he whispered. "He always lets you think you're leaving." Klein's throat went dry. "What do you mean?" Braddock swallowed, eyes glassy. "He wants witnesses," he said. "He wants you to tell the story his way." Klein looked up at the hatch, the rectangle of night above them. The field was quiet. Too quiet. Then, from somewhere in the tunnel behind them, a faint mechanical click, small, precise, like a switch being flipped. Klein spun, flashlight snapping back, beam slicing the darkness. And in the far end of the tunnel, just beyond the bend, a red light blinked once, twice, steady now, a tiny glowing eye reflected in wet concrete. An explosive device didn't need to be big in a tunnel. It only needed to steal the air. It only needed to collapse an exit. It only needed to turn a rescue into a burial. Klein's heart slammed. She shoved Braddock forward. "Move," she snapped. Braddock's eyes widened with sudden terror, as if he'd seen this before. "Dana," he tried to say, but she didn't let him finish. She half dragged him, half carried him, boots splashing through shallow water, the hatch growing closer, the rectangle of night turning into the only thing that mattered. Above them, the speaker crackled again, the voice calm, almost affectionate. "Don't run," it said. "It ruins the timing." Klein hit the hatch and shoved Braddock upward first, forcing him toward open air, her hands on his back, pushing him like shoving a man out of a grave. Braddock's fingers clawed at the edge, shaking, pulling himself up. Klein grabbed the lip, hauling herself after him. And then the tunnel behind them exhaled a deep, violent sound, less a bang than a sudden hungry roar, air pressure slamming into Klein's legs as if the earth itself had kicked her, light flashing white in her peripheral vision, the concrete walls shuddering, dust blasting up through the hatch like breath from a monster's mouth. Klein's body slammed onto the grass. She rolled instinctively, gun raised, ears ringing, eyes stinging with grit. Braddock lay beside her, coughing, face pressed to the ground, alive but shaking like a leaf in a storm. The memorial field lights flickered. The speaker on the wall continued, unbothered, as if the blast had been part of the soundtrack. "There," the voice said softly. "Now you'll remember this part." Klein forced herself up, scanning the darkness beyond the field, searching for a silhouette, a car, movement, anything to shoot at, anything to arrest, anything to make the fear stop being abstract. But there was only night, and the flags, and the stone names watching without eyes. Braddock coughed again, then whispered something that hit harder than the blast. "He's not missing," he rasped. "He's running it." Klein turned sharply. "Who?" Braddock's eyes met hers, and in them was something that looked like shame, like confession, like a man finally realizing the hero wall had always been a lie. He opened his mouth. And before he could speak the name, a single shot cracked from somewhere in the dark, clean, distant, precise, and Braddock's body jerked, a sharp inhale that never finished, his mouth still open on a word that would not come out, and Klein felt the moment tear open in front of her as if time itself had been cut, the case balancing on the edge of a confession and then sliding, again, into silence. The shot didn't echo the way movies promise, it snapped and vanished into the night like a dry branch breaking, and for half a heartbeat Sheriff Dana Klein couldn't process what her eyes were already seeing because her brain still believed in rescue stories, still believed a hero could be pulled back from the dark with enough force, but Lyle Braddock's body had jerked once and then sagged, his weight folding into the grass beside the memorial wall, and the word he'd been trying to give her died in his throat with a thin, wet sound that was more animal than man. Klein dropped to her knees, hands on him instantly, pressing at the wound she couldn't fully see in the low light, warmth slicking her palms, her flashlight beam bouncing across his face as his eyes fluttered, trying to stay open, trying to hold on long enough to spit out the name that would end this, the name that had been driving the county insane for years, and then his gaze fixed on her with a terrible clarity, like he was looking at her through time, and his lips moved without sound, a final attempt, a last breath shaped into something that never made it into air. Klein shouted for medics even though she knew no one was supposed to be close, even though she knew the plan was quiet and invisible, because plans evaporate when blood hits grass. Her radio was already in her hand, thumb hammering the transmit button, voice tearing out of her with a control she no longer had. Shots fired, Memorial Field, get units moving, now, now, now. She looked up, scanning the darkness beyond the lamplight, trying to find the shooter the way you try to find a snake after it's bitten you, eyes sweeping the tree line, the courthouse steps, the shadowed street beyond the park, any silhouette, any glint, any hint of movement. Nothing. The night was blank. The night was obedient. That was the sickest part. Whoever fired had done it from a place they knew would stay hidden, a place that had been chosen days, maybe months ago, the way the ambush in the scrubland had been chosen, the way her home had been entered without breaking a frame. Braddock made a faint noise, a wheeze that sounded like air leaking through a torn valve. Klein leaned in close, her mouth near his ear, voice low, urgent, intimate. Say it, she demanded, not politely, not gently. Say the name. His eyes shifted, drifting, then snapped back with effort. His lips formed a shape, 2 syllables, maybe 3, and her heart lurched because it looked like a beginning. She pressed her ear closer, as if proximity could turn a whisper into a confession, and then Braddock's body shuddered once more, a single involuntary tremor, and the breath left him, and the space where the name should have been became silence again, thicker than any sound. Klein's hand stayed on him for a second too long, as if refusal could reverse physics, as if her grip could drag him back from whatever dark place had swallowed him, but the truth was undeniable. The hero wall had just gained a new name, and the county had just been robbed of its only living key. She stood up fast, rage snapping her spine straight, and in that moment the speaker on the memorial wall crackled to life again, casual, smooth, unhurried, the voice of someone enjoying the pacing. Tragic, it said, like a reporter reading a breaking update. But necessary. He was about to spoil it. Klein spun toward the speaker, yanked it off the stone ledge, and hurled it into the grass. It bounced once, plastic casing splitting, the voice stuttering for a second before cutting out. But she knew it didn't matter. The speaker wasn't the man. The speaker was just his mouth when he wanted to stay invisible. Sirens bloomed in the distance, growing louder, tearing through the quiet like fabric ripping. Flashing lights approached from multiple directions, blue and red painting the park in frantic colors, and deputies poured in with weapons drawn, breath steaming, eyes wide, trying to catch up to a scene that had already happened. One officer dropped to Braddock, checking pulse, while another grabbed Klein's shoulder, asking questions she couldn't answer fast enough. Where was the shooter? Did you see? How many? Klein shoved free and pointed hard toward the darkness beyond the field. Lock down every road, she barked. Set up a perimeter. Nobody leaves town. Nobody. A lieutenant hesitated, the old training fighting the chaos. Sheriff, with respect. With respect, Klein cut in, voice like steel scraping concrete, do it. The medics arrived and confirmed what Klein already knew. Braddock was gone. They covered him with a sheet that fluttered in the night breeze like a surrender flag. Someone took Klein's statement in a notepad that shook in their hand. Someone asked about the explosion in the tunnel. Someone asked about the ring. Klein answered in fragments, because her mind was already moving beyond the park, beyond the corpse, into the next layer of this nightmare, because the shooter had known exactly when and where she would be, and that meant that, come alone, wasn't just a trap, it was surveillance, precision, a plan written by someone who understood law enforcement like a native language. Back at the station, they pulled camera feeds from every angle around the courthouse and memorial. Most cameras showed nothing. Empty sidewalks. Still flags. The occasional patrol car. But one feed, from a traffic camera half a block away, caught a glimpse, at 11:15, a dark sedan rolling through the intersection with headlights off for just a second, then on again. The plate was blurred. The driver's face was hidden by the rearview glare. But in the passenger seat, a shape leaned forward, a pale oval that might have been a mask or might have been the moon catching glass. The sedan turned smoothly, disappeared behind the courthouse, and was gone. They ran it through enhancement. Frames sharpened. Pixels argued. Nothing definitive. But there was a detail, small and wrong. The sedan's rear window had a sticker in the corner, a faded badge-style decal that read, in reverse from the camera angle, "Support our first responders." A sticker you'd see on a deputy's truck, on a firefighter's car, on a family minivan in a patriotic town. The ring sat on Klein's desk in its evidence pouch, the diamond reflecting the overhead light like an eye. She stared at it until she couldn't stand the shine anymore, then shoved it into a drawer and slammed it shut. She wasn't giving him the satisfaction of seeing it again. Not yet. The question that burned was sharper: how had the killer looped the station cameras? How had he entered her home without force? How had he known her movements, her routines, her daughter's school pickup line? Admin access. That phrase returned like a bad taste. Admin access didn't mean genius. It meant permission. Or theft of permission. Or someone on the inside handing it over with a smile. She called in the IT contractor who maintained the sheriff's office security system, a man named Peter Lasky who smelled like soda and stale cologne. He arrived sweating, nervous, swearing he hadn't given anyone credentials. Klein didn't care about swearing. She cared about facts. She had him sit in the conference room while a state investigator watched him like a hawk, and she forced the system logs open on a screen bigger than his excuses. The camera loop wasn't a physical cut. It was a software injection, a replay file inserted for exactly 3 minutes, covering the time when someone had entered the building and planted the envelope behind Braddock's photo. The login used, Admin Klein. Her own account. Klein stared at the screen, feeling something cold spread under her ribs. "That's impossible," Lasky stammered. "That requires your password and your token." Klein's eyes narrowed. "Show me the token log." Lasky clicked through menus, hands shaking. A list appeared, time-stamped authentication entries. One token was used at 3:12 p.m., the time of the camera loop. The token ID matched Klein's physical key fob. Her key fob was in her pocket. She pulled it out, held it up. "Then how," she said, voice low, dangerous, "was it used?" Lasky swallowed hard, eyes darting. "Cloning," he whispered. It's possible to clone RFID. If someone had your fob near a reader long enough. Near enough. Long enough." Klein's mind rewound through the last week like surveillance footage in her own skull. The diner. The courthouse meeting. The memorial ceremony 2 days ago where she shook hands with half the town, each touch casual, each smile polite, each person close enough to brush her coat pocket. Any of them could have stood beside her with a device hidden under a pamphlet. Any of them could have stolen her access without stealing her keys. The state investigator leaned in. "This person had to be close to you," he said quietly. "Comfortable. Not afraid." Klein's jaw tightened until her temples ached. "I know." They pulled staff rosters. They audited who had admin-level access. Only 4 people: Klein, the lieutenant, the dispatcher supervisor, and Lyle Braddock, whose credentials, unbelievably, had never been fully deactivated after retirement because the county's systems were old and complacency was cheaper than upgrades. His username still existed in the architecture like a ghost. And ghosts, Klein was learning, were useful. They tested the storage unit typewriter ribbon for deeper imprints, the faint embossing left when someone typed over paper stacked on paper. Forensic techs ran special lighting over it, coaxing letters out of pressure marks like pulling footprints from mud. A paragraph emerged, incomplete but legible, and as they read it, the room felt like it lost oxygen. "We built this together," the imprint said. "The public needs a monster. You gave them Keller. You gave them Harlan." The next line was smudged, but one name stood out like a flare: "Klein will be next to hold the ring." Klein's throat went dry. Built this together. That meant partnership. More than one person. A network. A small one, maybe only 2 or 3, but enough to cover each other, enough to move evidence, enough to steer investigations, enough to decide who got blamed and who got buried. Her phone rang, internal line. She answered on instinct and heard Deputy Harmon's voice, strained, breathing hard. "Sheriff," he said. "We've got a problem." Klein's heart tightened. "Jenna." "She's safe," Harmon said quickly, then hesitated, and the hesitation told Klein the rest was worse. "But someone left something at my door. While we were home." Klein's skin went cold. "What?" Harmon swallowed. "A package. No return address. I didn't open it. But there's a note taped to it. It says, you can't hide her in someone else's house." Klein closed her eyes for half a second, feeling the weight of it. The killer wasn't threatening her daughter anymore. He was demonstrating omnipresence, the ability to cross any boundary, to treat every protective move she made like a joke. And he wasn't just watching Klein. He was watching everyone around her. Anyone she loved could become a lever. "Don't open it," Klein said, voice tight. "Back away. Call the bomb unit. Evacuate neighbors." "Already doing it," Harmon said, then dropped his voice. "Sheriff, how does he know where I live?" Klein stared at the evidence drawer, at the place where the ring lay hidden, and she felt the bitter answer in her mouth. "Because he's one of us," she said softly. "Or he's close enough to wear us." She hung up and turned to the room, state investigators, deputies, techs, faces pale, eyes hungry for direction. They wanted her to be the steady center of the storm. They wanted the sheriff to be the wall between the town and the dark. Klein stood up straighter, even as exhaustion pressed into her bones like wet concrete, and she spoke with the calm of someone stepping onto thin ice. "From this moment," she said, "we treat every person with access as a suspect until proven otherwise. Every key. Every code. Every uniform." She paused, letting it land. "And we stop chasing his story." A deputy frowned. "Sheriff." Klein's eyes hardened. "He wants headlines," she said. "He wants the community to panic. He wants to write us into the roles he planned." Her gaze slid across the room like a blade. "So we don't give him roles. We don't give him a stage." Outside, through the station windows, Barton County looked quiet, normal, asleep. But Klein could feel the county shifting, the way you feel a house settle before it collapses. Braddock was dead. Harlan was dead. Keller was dead. And still the voice lived, still the typewriter keys kept tapping somewhere in the dark, still the phrase hung over everything like smoke, "You never found the other field." Klein walked alone into the evidence room, shut the door behind her, and opened the drawer where the ring lay. She held it up between her fingers, the diamond catching light, turning it into a tiny flash that felt like a signal flare. For a moment she imagined tossing it into the river, burying it where no one could ever use it again. But she didn't. She couldn't. The ring wasn't just leverage. It was a trail. It was bait. And bait, handled correctly, can become a hook. Her radio crackled suddenly, a dispatcher's voice tense with urgency. "Sheriff, caller on line 2. Anonymous. Says they have information about Claire Donovan's last call. Says it wasn't to her fiancé." Klein's pulse hitched. "Put them through." The line clicked, and for a second there was only breathing. Slow. Controlled. Familiar in the worst way. Then the voice spoke, soft and pleased, like a man leaning close to a microphone in a dark studio. "Sheriff," it said, "did you like the memorial?" Klein's grip on the ring tightened until the metal bit her skin. "You killed him." A quiet laugh. "I edited the scene," the voice corrected. "Big difference." Klein forced her voice flat. "What do you want?" A pause, like he was savoring her restraint. "I want you to stop pretending this is about Claire," he said. "Claire was the opening paragraph. This is about Barton County. This is about what you protect." His voice dropped lower, intimate. "And now you have the ring. Which means you're finally ready to write the next line." Klein's mouth went dry. "Where's the other field?" The voice seemed to smile through the static. "You're standing in it," it whispered. "Every day. And then the line went dead, leaving Klein alone with the ring's cold weight and the sick realization that the other field might not be a place on a map at all, but something larger, something embedded in the county itself, an institution, a system, a circle of names carved into stone, something you couldn't cordon off with tape, something you couldn't search with dogs, something that had been hiding in plain sight for decades, smiling for cameras, accepting medals, teaching rookies how to interrogate, and waiting for 1116 to come around again.